It's time for another episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show, a podcast where I connect you with thought leaders from across the globe, digging into some of my favorite topics like personal development, marketing, spirituality, and pretty much any other shiny object that happens to catch my attention. Today, my special guest is Alan Arnold, and we're going to be discussing his new book, Chaos Can't Overcome What Comes Against You in This Shaken World. Alan, it is truly an honor, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shaun. It's great to be with you.
Well, Alan, this is the very first time you and I are meeting today, and I know inevitably you are going to be brand new to some of my viewers and some of my listeners. So let's kick off our conversation by having you share a bit of what we might call the Alan Arnold origin story. Feel free to insert your superpowers, your special abilities, whatever we need to know about you. Share that with us now.
I love the question of origin story, and I am a huge superhero fan. If you could see my office right now fully, you'd see Superman posters, you'd see all kind of heroic type things. And I love that because their origin story shapes them and it shapes us. And mine, I started out, Shaun, a very driven man. And my goal was the more I could do, the more I was. And so I started doing a whole lot of things and rising up corporately really fast. And this was in Christian publishing. And so this is not a secular world, but a Christian world. But even in that, my drivenness started to become toxic. I thought I was doing great things for God. So I would just do more, but I wasn't focused on the heart or soul care. And it really reached a crescendo. This was right before 9/11. And I was catching a plane. I had a video crew on it. They had already gotten on. We were going to do a video shoot with a major Christian author. I was distracted on my phone. I run to the gate. They've closed it. They won't let me on. And the supervisor walks away. And this was the type of man I was at that time. I just waited for her to leave, walked out the emergency door. The alarms are blaring. I walk out on the tarmac and stand in front of the plane and will not move. And the pilot comes off the plane eventually, and we talk. And I actually convince him to get my seat on the plane. And that was the state I was in. Thankfully, it was before 9/11, or I probably wouldn't be talking to you today. But that drivenness, finally, I reach just an imploding point of I can't keep doing this. And that's when I started realizing it's not really what I do first, but who I am. And that started my adventure into being a son. And so for the past, I don't know, decade or so, my life has been an exploration of what does it mean to live as a son of God instead of the guy who's just trying to base his validation on what he gets done.
Yeah, we can get into a weird place where we start doing great things for God by ourselves, not actually stopping to ask the question, God, what actually do you have for me to press into? What do you have for me to do? I'm curious, when you kind of had that epiphany moment, that shift moment, like what age were you when that happened?
Well, it happened for me when I was in my late 30s, early 40s. Unfortunately, my drivenness had been working really well on a corporate level. Like anybody that needed anything done would give it to me. And the way it really pivoted was my boss cared enough to, because I was a very, I'm 6'4", I'm a big guy, and I can be kind of domineering and intimidating. And thankfully, my boss wasn't. And he brought me to lunch and he said, "Hey, Alan, I just wanted you to know your team is setting records. You're doing great. You've got a team of about 15, 20 people, and none of them enjoy being around you. They all think you're a jerk. And the only reason they're with you is because you're successful, but they don't enjoy your presence at all." And Shaun, that for me was this really punch to the gut that I realized, do I want to be that kind of man going forward where people are only with me because of results and productivity, but they don't care for my presence? Or do I want to shift? And that started a big shift. And a few years later, I had a whole new publishing division. I started fiction division and a whole new team. And none of them could believe when they hear stories, you were that guy? Because you're not that guy at all now. But it took intervention of somebody who really cared to speak into me of who I could be. And that changed everything.
Wow. That's fantastic. We all need people who can sometimes say the hard things or speak into our lives, especially when we're willing to listen. I feel like when we get into our late 30s and into our early 40s, and I'm 42 right now, that's a time when we have maybe enough life experience and wisdom where we can receive those things, maybe in a way that we couldn't have when we were a younger man, because we tend to think we know everything. I don't know. I find when we get to like 35 to 45, there's a lot of stuff that shifts because, man, you realize you didn't really have it all together as much as you thought you did.
Well, a lot of times too, you realize no matter how much you think you can make life work, you eventually realize you're not as good as you thought you were. You can't fake it enough. You can't strive enough. And your validation can't be based on things that can be taken away. And so to me, yeah, you're right. Around that age 40, you do start to see life differently. Or unfortunately, a lot of people hunker down, double down, and become twice as aggressive or twice as determined to make life work on their own. And I think the magic is when we realize actually we can't. We don't control nearly as much as we think we can. So yeah, around 40, humility starts to enter in a little more, I think. Or we just get weary and say, I raise the white flag, God.
Yeah, that's a whole nother. We'll save that conversation for a different day because we could spend a lot of time talking about that. Well, Alan, you've given us a little bit of your backstory. Now let's get into what I like to call the story behind the book. I, like you, I work in the publishing space, so I'm ever curious. What was somebody's motivation? What was the spark that ignited the journey? Why did you decide to write this book?
Shaun, I decided to write this book really as a way to make sense of the world around me. 2020, I think for any listener, has been a chaotic year. It's been a year unlike any other, whether it's our kids in school or the virus or politics or social unrest, financial loss of a job. It's changed pretty much on every level. And so I found myself in the midst of this swirling chaos, and I didn't like who I was becoming. I felt like I was becoming more spun up and chaotic. And I knew that wasn't what God had for me or for us. And so I started really kind of a journey of discovery. What's going on here? Because it's more than just things are chaotic. Yes, things are chaotic, but something deeper and more is going on. So I asked God to open my eyes and to take me on a journey, because we hear in John 16:33, Jesus say this kind of revolutionary thing. First, he just addresses reality. In this world, you will have trouble. Or I think we could substitute the word chaos. So he's saying, yeah, in this world, look around you. You will have chaos. Not maybe, you will. But the whole verse isn't just that. The whole verse is, he talks about, I'm telling you this so you'll have peace. So take heart, for I have overcome the world. So all of that's in one verse is, I'm telling you this not to cause you to panic or fear. Yep, there's chaos, but I want you to take heart. I want you to have peace. And the reason is because he's overcome the world. So that started me on this journey of how can we overcome the things that overwhelm us? Because Jesus is saying it is possible, and I'm sure not experiencing it. So I need an answer.
Well, and how would you, if you had to contrast your understanding of the word chaos or the definition of chaos, how did that shift as you began intentionally processing for this particular book project? So I think we all would have had a working idea in 2019, and now in 2020, like chaos has invaded every corner of our life. So we think about it very differently than we have in the past.
Exactly. Like in 2018, 2019, I rarely heard the word chaos. And, probably didn't even know how to spell it correctly the first time. And so it was not a word that you heard just mentioned much in conversation. And it's everywhere, like you said. And the dictionary definition, Shaun, is really interesting. The main one is chaos is a state of disorder or confusion. And so if you just kind of look up the dictionary definition of chaos, it's a state of utter confusion or disorder. And that's good, but it's not enough, like for what we're facing. I mean, I felt that way all through high school and college math. But I wasn't chaotic. I was just not good at math. And so I was totally confused every time I went into the classroom. But it wasn't chaos like we're looking at. And so I wrote my own definition of chaos, created one in the book that I want to share with you that I think is more accurate. And it says chaos is a destructive, fear-based force that prevents you from fully living. The way it comes against us, large and small, are often intensely personal strikes meant to leave us empty. And so that definition, now I felt like I was getting somewhere, because the ways chaos comes against me is different, Shaun, than you, and different than the listener. There is a personal aspect. It's not just this generic force. It's very personal. And it comes against us in ways that, in a sense, we're most vulnerable. And so that really piqued my curiosity. What's going on here? Because now it's not just something that affects all of us equally, but it's something meant, customized to take us out. So I think that definition is helpful. And it applies whether somebody is dealing with an illness or financial loss or just in a minivan with 6 screaming kids. Like it works in any of those situations, because the goal of chaos is to make us more chaotic. And so anytime that's starting to happen, we know something's at play and our radar should go up.
Well, I don't know about my viewers, my listeners, but I'm always down for a good sermon illustration or a story that involves a snow globe. So next, let's have you tell us about the last snow globe and why you chose that as a way to kick off where you're going to take people in the book.
Great. Well, so the last snow globe, I start the whole book with a very short allegory. It's 4 pages. But I wanted to start with a story, because a story is a shortcut to the heart. And Jesus used parables, and we all love a good short story. And so the story, I won't give away the ending, but the story is basically there's this small island and a family makes snow globes there. But these snow globes are filled with not just artificial paper like snow, but living water. And more than that, colors that are just alive inside the snow globe. And they have a waterfall that they get the water for the snow globe from. But eventually, there's a fear on the island that's starting to overtake everybody. And the fear is that there is a beast on the island. And this beast is terrorizing people. This beast is shutting people down. It's causing them to stay in their homes. It's causing them to hunker down, to hide, to put their dreams on hold. And so the story is what's really going on this island. And the snow globe plays a really key role in overcoming what's going on, because it's what's inside the snow globe. Partially the answer is it's what's inside that matters. And with us, when we face chaos, it's what's inside that matters most. And Shaun, if I could, like, people love practical advice, and the story that I just described, when you read it, you'll see how it illustrates that. But one of the key principles with chaos is we don't have to let it in. We don't have to let it in. In other words, just like a snow globe's environment is not affected by the weather around us. It can be 120 degrees and you can have a snow globe and shake it and it's still snowing, in the snow globe. We can be chaos free in a world of chaos if we choose to not let the chaos in. And it's a choice we have to make. And my wife used to tell me all the time, and I've got the most loving wife in the world, very soft-spoken, very generous, kind. And she would just tell me, Alan, when things are chaotic around us, you actually become more chaotic and it creates more tension. And I hated hearing that, Shaun, but she was right. Like, she would say, when things are calm, you're great. But when things are chaotic, it spins you up and then you create even more chaos. And so I knew there had to be a way that I could navigate chaos and still stay chaos free. And the first principle is we don't have to let it in, because what happens normally when we are, in a chaotic situation? One of about 4 things. Either we shut down, we just hunker down. One is we get spun up and we start getting agitated and short with people and irritable and angry and offended. And boy, we see that all in our world right now. Another is we just, kind of set our dreams aside and say, well, it's a crazy time. We'll get to what gives us life. We'll get to the things that bring us joy later. But right now, we're just going to get in survival mode. And that's a third. And a fourth and final one I just offer is we become more chaotic to try to out chaos chaos. It's almost like, well, whatever chaos is going around, I'm going to dominate it and out chaos it. And the problem is we never overcome something by becoming more like it. It's impossible. And so none of our normal responses to chaos tend to work. The ones we've just grown up thinking, I guess I'm not expecting chaos. And when it blindsides me, I'll just react. Those reactions tend to be wrong and not helpful, and actually can create more chaos if we're not really careful. So that's why I wrote the book. Chaos can't overcome us if we choose to walk through it the way God has shown us. And I'd love to tell you a little bit about something that just blew me away when I was writing the book. It was actually the first lesson that God teaches us in Scripture, and I had missed it my whole life. And that is, if we go to Genesis, in the beginning, right? 1:1, we all know that verse. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So we're seeing God as creator. Genesis 1:1, he's a creator. Genesis 1:3, it talks about he starts creating. Let there be light. But Shaun, in Genesis 1:2, it's the first action that God takes. And that action is, it talks about the Spirit hovering over the murky darkness, the empty, inky void. And in the midst of that, which Hebrew scholars would say, whatever else is going on, that's chaos. And so the Spirit of God goes into the chaos, hovers over it, broods over it. Brood is a term like a mother hen. It's a life-giving, protective term. And God, in the midst of chaos, doesn't run away, doesn't get more chaotic, doesn't look at it and walk away and go, I'll get to that later. He actually goes into the chaos and brings beauty, life, and order from it. And he starts the creation days. And from chaos, he steps in and he transforms the atmosphere. He creates oceans and mountains and stallions and wildflowers and us as humans. And what's beautiful about that to me is it's the first lesson he teaches us. So you have to think, if you're God, the very first thing you model must be for a reason. It must be an invitation into something. And we see God in the first verses saying, I'm a creator and I can show you how to change chaos. I'll create beauty, life, and order from that. Now you get invited to do that in the world that you're living in. And so once I started seeing Genesis 1:2 as this powerful invitation, not just a story, not just a verse to skim over, but the very first thing God shows us how to do, because he knows we're going to need it in this world.
Well, and I'm a guy who, I haven't always worked in publishing. I spent like the first 11 years of my career track at several different software companies in Minneapolis. And anybody who's worked in the tech and startup space, it's kind of crazy all the time. Yet it was in those seasons of mergers and acquisitions and big changes that's when we were able to do some of the coolest stuff, because I feel like in the terms of chaos, there's a certain level of energy and momentum that can be harnessed creatively to go somewhere useful. So in terms of, even though we're stuck, we're walking through a season of massive chaos, I guess I'd like to pull more on the thread of, creativity as the antidote to chaos. How do we harness the momentum, the power of the chaos, and turn it into something beautiful, something orderly? What might that look like practically?
Yeah, great question. So I would say chaos, and Madeleine L'Engle, who I'm a big fan of, she wrote A Wrinkle in Time and was a writer several decades ago. But she talks about how chaos and cosmos are in conflict. Cosmos meaning the ordered universe. And that creativity is the key kind of that takes us from one to the other. And I believe that's totally true. And so I believe a really practical thing we get to do is God gives us creativity. Each of us have our unique gifting and talent. And how could we not? Because God is creator and we have his DNA as his sons and daughters. So we are all creative. And when we step into our lives with our creativity and our presence, which is how God creates through who he is and what he does, when we step into our life with our gifting and presence, we start to change the atmosphere around us. And so, the first step I was telling you is we don't have to let it in, but it gets better than that. The better is not only do we not have to let it in, but when we remain free of chaos, then we can start changing the world around us. And so if you're a stay-at-home mom, you can change the atmosphere in your home and bring beauty, life, and order by not giving in to the chaos. I don't believe that chaos is our friend, but I believe the enemy throws chaos at us to take us out. And so a lot of the fruit of chaos is steal, kill, and destroy, which in John 10:10 we hear are the fingerprints of the enemy. But Jesus in that same verse says he's come to give us life. And so chaos comes to steal, kill, and destroy us in the areas we're most vulnerable. God allows us to bring life and beauty and order. So through your podcast, through the books that your team publishes, through a stay-at-home mom's impact or dad's impact on their kids, a barista, a chef, an architect, a teacher, all of us can bring these sparks, what I call eternal sparks, into the world when we don't give way to chaos, but actually bring that strength of who we are and what we do. And the beautiful thing about this is when we're all doing that, chaos blinks. It starts to give way because chaos at its core is empty and void. That's how it's described in Genesis 1:2, empty and void. And so when we start bringing life and light into the empty void places of the world, we always see God's victory. We always see the kingdom coming in a little more through what we do. But it starts with us as a choice. We either, if we're taken out by chaos, it's like a person on a basketball team that sits on a bench and wonders why they're not having much impact in the game. If we allow chaos to cause us to just shrug our shoulders, give up, walk away, wait it out, all of those wrong responses, we don't really have a chance to enter into it and bring beauty, life, and order. So that's why I think it's really important that when we see chaos, we don't respond out of fear, but we actually understand it from a scriptural standpoint, and we understand God's invitation, which is come with me and let's transform chaos into beauty, life, and order.
Well, we've barely scratched the surface. You cover more ground in the book, but if you think of readers getting to that last page, closing that back flap, like what's the call to action? What's the takeaway? How do you hope you shifted them as they're looking forward to finishing out 2020 and entering into 2021? How is their life going to be different if they continue the journey they started with the book?
I think their life can be radically different. And I think that the difference is they can live chaos-free in a world of chaos. Because here's the thing, we all hear people, and I've said this before, man, I can't wait for 2020 to be over. Like, it has just not been a stellar year. It's been hard. Yes, I've learned a lot, but it's been a hard year and I've got a lot of scars from it, and I'm guessing most of us do. But the thing is, a calendar change from 2020 to 2021 isn't the kind of change that sets us free from chaos. There will be, I hate to tell everybody this, but there will be a lot of chaos in 2021.
What?
Whoever wins the election, whatever happens politically, whatever happens socially, we live in a fallen world. And as Jesus said, in this world, we will have trouble. It is a shaken world. So the way readers will be different is the promise is you can be unshaken in a shaken world. You can actually bring beauty into the world and life and order because of who you are. And if we're told we're to be the light of the world, the way to be the light is not to let your strength and your hope and your heart go numb. It's to engage in a fallen world, in a shaken world, in a way that changes it. And so the way I think, Shaun, to answer it is, if you want to go forward and be different, if you're not happy with the way chaos has come against you and your responses to it, the book's invitation is, then there is a way to change it. There is a way to enter into the chaos with God and come out more wholehearted, more hopeful, your family stronger. But it doesn't just happen. It's a conscious journey that you choose to take. And that's what I'm inviting people into in the book, Chaos Can't.
Well, and I think that is one of the surprising beauties of this season of 2020 is it's been a compressing time. Sometimes God comes out, sometimes other things come out of us. But one of the great things is I feel like this season has exposed the chaos, be it internal or external in our own lives. And as we see that, and if we're willing to wrestle with it, we have an invitation to invite God into that chaos that's inside of us or that chaos that is in our lives. And for better or worse, it's unavoidable in many ways in this season. And so we may as well go through it because the path is not around, the path is not to avoid, the path is through. And if we invite God to bring order into those situations, I think it's going to make a huge difference in our lives. Alan, before we wrap up, I'd love for you to take a few moments, pray for the viewers, pray for the listeners, however you feel led to encourage us today.
I'd love to. God, we right now just come before you and we declare that the universe is yours. We declare that you are the creator of everything. And we declare that you and your throne and your kingdom are unshaken. And God, we ask you to help us not lose heart in these times, to help us choose love over fear, to help us see good in a world that desperately needs good and life and hope. And in Acts 2:25, God, we read where it says, I see that the Lord is always with me. I will not be shaken, for he is right beside me. And God, that's our prayer, that we remember that you are right beside us and that we refuse to be shaken in a world that's really shaken, and that we instead bring beauty and life, hope and peace from the chaos, and that we fill the empty void places with your hope and your life. So God, that's our prayer. We love you. We believe your word is true. And we believe that we can live without chaos, but in great hope for what's to come now and in the new year. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for that, Alan. And Alan, for the listeners, the viewers who'd like to connect with you, find out more about the book, where are some of the places we can hang out with you on the web?
Best place to find out more about the book is on Amazon. It's available as a paperback or an ebook. And the title is Chaos Can't. You can find that on Amazon. And then I have a website, withallen.com, withallen.com. And on it, it really goes into, Shaun, how we can pursue the things we love, our dreams, our creativity, actively and intimately with God. So there's videos, there's blog posts, there's some podcasts, but the whole purpose of it is to invite people into the active pursuit of what they love to do with God.
And like we do with every episode, we'll have detailed links in the show notes, places where you can connect with Alan and pick up your very own copy of the new book. It's time to bring this episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show to a close. Many thanks for being a part of my conversation with Alan Arnold. Once again, our book today was Chaos Can't, Overcome What Comes Against You in This Shaken World. If you'd like to connect with Alan and find out more, a great place to start is his website. You can find that over at withallen.com. And Alan, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's been an honor. It's been a joy to have you on the show.
Thanks, Shaun.